My jealous sister-in-law attempted to poison me during my husband's birthday party right after we announced my pregnancy. However, her cruel plan backfired in the worst way imaginable. Now, instead of celebrating, she's facing criminal charges, a big prison sentence, and a crumbling marriage as her husband has filed for divorce. I, 29F, have been married to my husband, Harry, for the past 7 years. I love everything about our marriage except the fact that he is related to his sister, Kayla, who brings all the negativity into our lives. Now, don't get me wrong, I used to love Kayla when I first got to know her, but over time I have quickly changed my opinion. She is incredibly negative, manipulative, and toxic. I have worked hard for years to avoid getting on her bad side because I know the kind of person she is. In the past, my husband had dated Kayla's best friend when he was 17, and later they broke up because he felt he was pressured into being with her because of Kayla. When he turned 23 and found himself single, his sister insisted that he and her other friend should be together, but he refused. They had a huge fight, and she went crying to their parents about how she wanted him to marry someone she felt comfortable with, but his parents didn't really listen to her. When my husband and I met and fell in love, his parents were very supportive. But Kayla consistently treated me with a cold demeanor whenever I was around. She would always bring up Harry's exes for no reason, telling him how well they were doing and how he should get back in touch with them. This went on for a while, and I wasn't the only one who found this weird. Harry found it weird as well. He would ask her to stop bringing up his exes. Kayla would then get pissed and start taunting me about how I was getting jealous and how he shouldn't be with someone insecure like me. Whenever his parents would call us for dinner, Kayla would purposefully bring one of Harry's exes, telling us how she had stumbled into them that day by accident and had to invite them for dinner out of politeness. She also checks my Instagram relentlessly, even though she doesn't follow me. I have a public account, so I notice she's always the first person to check my stories. If a guy comments on my photo, she would then go to her brother and complain about how I was posting inappropriate pictures of myself. Harry and I would literally laugh at her accusations. When Harry and I decided to move in together, Kayla urged him to break up with me, telling him how I had so many flaws as a woman and that she could find someone much better than me. This comment honestly hurt me since I had been nothing but nice to her throughout everything. Unfortunately, as soon as Harry and I got engaged, Kayla's behavior got even worse. When we announced our engagement, everyone started congratulating us, but I noticed Kayla was very quiet. Then she got up from her chair and walked out of our party to everyone's shock. Later, she called Harry crying and screaming about how she didn't appreciate being told the news with everyone else, since she thought he was the closest to her and she deserved to have been the first one to know about his engagement. Later, she sent me a message, which was almost borderline threatening, saying how I should be a good wife to her brother since she had always been the only woman in his life. The message was so weird that I cringed. I didn't even bother replying and left her on read, which I know must have pissed her off even more. Kayla started to gradually ignore me anytime she saw me. For some reason, she remained involved with all the wedding activities. When I went dress shopping and had my bridal shower, she took her criticism to a whole new level, openly expressing her discontent with my choices, despite both my future mother-in-law and fiancé calling her out on it multiple times. Her behavior persisted. One day, while discussing the centerpiece with my future mother-in-law, Kayla overheard and immediately began to mock me, saying how my choice had no class and how this was why she wanted her brother to marry someone better. That was the breaking point for me, and I lost my composure. I screamed at her, telling her I couldn't tolerate her constant taunts and criticisms any longer, and I made it clear to her that she was no longer invited to our wedding. Kayla was shocked, gasping in disbelief as if she had never expected me to stand up to her. Even my mother-in-law was furious with her and supported me. Later, Kayla reached out to Harry, complaining about how I embarrassed her and insisting that he should control me since I was going to be his wife. Harry told her firmly that he stood by my decision, and that if she didn't apologize, she wouldn't be invited to the wedding. Begrudgingly, she sent me a heartfelt apology, which I saw and again left on read. With the wedding preparations, I was already exhausted, and I didn't want to be involved in her drama. In the end, she did end up coming to our wedding because I didn't want her to badmouth us later. Now, my wedding had a certain theme of pink hues and pastels, which everyone seemed to follow, including the guests. However, Kayla showed up wearing a black, floor-length gown with a veil, as if she was coming to a funeral. We were shocked, to say the least. Kayla went around telling everyone how she was mourning for losing her brother to another woman. During the reception, my husband could see that I was uncomfortable with Kayla's wedding outfit and confronted her about it. She tried to play the victim, saying that she had the right to wear whatever she wanted, and that I was too controlling. In the end, my mother and father-in-law asked her to leave when she wouldn't stop making a scene. It was humiliating for me, and ever since that day, I have steered clear of her. When I gave birth to my son, Nate, I refused to allow Kayla anywhere near our baby. She did try to fight it, but my husband and his parents had my back. They understood exactly why I didn't want her near my baby and respected my decision. 2 years ago, Kayla had a miscarriage with her then boyfriend, Jamie, and it completely broke her. It was indeed a sad time for everyone. Harry and I felt sad for her since we already had a child. After her miscarriage, we decided to be a bit more forgiving. We would invite her to our place so she could bond with our son, Nate. I have to say that she has been surprisingly sweet to our son, despite how she behaves with me. In the beginning, she seemed to have changed, but over time she went right back to who she was before. She's always going on about how tough her life is, how things never seem to work out for her, blaming ex-bosses or ex-friends for messing things up in her life. Over time, I have noticed that, in her head, she is never wrong. She rarely admits to any fault in conflicts and is constantly trying to get people on her side by playing the victim card. This year, she decided to get married and invited everyone except us. Harry was shocked to find out that we weren't invited since our relationship seemed to be better. When we questioned her about it, she started to say how she couldn't allow me to come because I might do something to upstage her wedding. I called and asked her why she would think something like that when I have never done anything to her. Kayla then mentioned how she had dressed up in all black to our wedding, so now she was afraid that I might do the same. I was furious about how manipulative she was and straight up told my husband about this. Harry talked with his parents, and they decided to tell Kayla that they would neither pay for the wedding nor attend it. This reduced Kayla to tears, and she started to blame me for creating this fiasco. My husband informed her that she had shamelessly admitted her own mistake, so she had no right to be pointing fingers at me. But Kayla justified her actions, saying that our wedding happened a long time ago and that I should just get over it. Later, since my father-in-law and mother-in-law were still refusing to pay for her wedding, she reached out to apologize to me and beg for forgiveness. I hate to admit this, but Kayla can be very sweet and persuasive when she wants something. I forgave her and wanted to just move on from the past. Her wedding with Jamie went well, we all attended and had a good time. Not even 6 months later, Kayla was at our doorstep, complaining about how her marriage was falling apart. Harry and I let her stay with us for a few days, where she would vent for hours on end about her husband. They seemed to be having issues with getting pregnant, and Kayla was clearly blaming Jamie for everything. I tried to talk to Kayla, but she was adamant that it was all her husband's fault. When she wasn't complaining about her husband, she would hyper-focus on our lives and try to make up things that didn't exist. For example, I generally go to the gym every morning before work. Sometimes, when I'm running late, I take my work clothes so I can finish my workout, take a bath, and change into my work attire. Kayla noticed this for some time and would ask me a lot of questions about it, like why I was taking a bath or why I even needed to go to the gym. I didn't think much about it and would tell her how I liked maintaining my weight and didn't want to go to the office all sweaty. She would purse her lips and nod. Eventually, things got better with Jamie, and she went back to living with him. One weekend, my husband and I went to have lunch with my in-laws. Kayla and Jamie had also been invited. We left our son, Nate, with a babysitter since he usually got bored when us grown-ups talked for long hours and preferred to stay home and play. During lunch, my mother-in-law was telling us about how one of her friends was currently divorced because her friend's husband cheated on her, so she left him and took half of his assets. Kayla suddenly interrupted her to ask my husband if he and I had signed a prenup before we got married. We all stopped eating to look at her. She acted like I wasn't even there and looked at my husband expectantly. Now, my husband is not someone who minces his words, so he told her straight up that since he and I both earned quite well, we saw no reason to get a prenup. Kayla snorted and started to say how nowadays there are a lot of cheaters around and that he could be blindsided any day. I took offense to her words and asked her to explain exactly what she was insinuating. Kayla then started to say how I was definitely meeting up with someone since I was always carrying a change of clothes everywhere, and that, as Harry's sister, it was her duty to warn her brother. I was shocked to hear these words. My in-laws immediately came to my defense and told her to stop making things up and that she should not meddle in other people's business. Without missing a beat, Kayla went on to say how she was only trying to be there for her brother and then made a joke about whether our son, Nate, was really Harry's son since he didn't exactly look like him. I swear I saw my husband's face go red with anger. I have never seen him this angry in my life. He looked Kayla straight in the eye and told her that this was why she was not a mother yet, because she didn't deserve to be one, and that her child was better off in heaven rather than with someone like her. Kayla's mouth hung open in shock. My in-laws just stared quietly as my husband went off on Kayla about how she was a shameless person who tried to ruin everything because she had nothing good going on in her life, and how she was just a loser who did nothing while her husband worked hard all day. He continued, saying that instead of pointing fingers at me and asking about prenups, she should worry about her own marriage since she was clearly projecting. Kayla was reduced to tears and started bawling. She looked at Jamie, who was sitting right next to her, for support, but he never uttered a word. I have never seen my husband lose his mind like this. In the end, Kayla got up from her chair and ran into the washroom. My husband was fuming. My mother-in-law came over to calm him down, while I rubbed his hand. He apologized to me for what his sister said about our son, and I nodded, understanding how frustrating she could be. I was kind of glad my husband stood up for me so publicly since I had taken enough from Kayla over the years. After he calmed down, he apologized to Jamie but ignored Kayla completely. After lunch that day, we went back to no contact with Kayla. Her behavior was not only affecting me but also affecting my husband. We blocked her from everywhere so she couldn't reach out to us. My in-laws agreed that Kayla had gone too far this time and saw how their usually calm son had been pushed to the edge. It has been a year now since we have talked with her, and everything has been going smoothly. 2 months ago, I found out that I was pregnant. This was a complete surprise since we weren't even trying. My husband and I feel blessed to welcome another family member. We were waiting for the right time to inform everyone and decided to reveal it on my husband's birthday. My in-laws wanted to celebrate Harry, so they were throwing a big bash for him in their backyard. Our close family and friends were invited. Kayla must have heard about this from others and decided to show up. My husband and I were shocked to see her. Kayla came and hugged Harry, telling him how much she missed him and how sorry she was for their last conversation. My husband took my hand and told his sister that she should be apologizing to me, since she had insulted my character. Kayla nodded, turned to me, and apologized, saying she had been going to therapy for the past few months and realized how wrong it was for her to humiliate me like that. I didn't believe a word she was saying, but I didn't want to be rude to her in front of everyone, so I just nodded. My in-laws checked up on us and assured us that if we were uncomfortable, they would ask Kayla to leave. Since this was my husband's party, Harry didn't want to make a scene, so we agreed to let it go. Throughout the party, I noticed Kayla laughing and mingling with everyone, which was odd. She seemed too positive, which was completely out of character for her, but since she mentioned therapy, I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. When it was time to cut the cake, Harry gave a heartwarming speech about how he considered himself the luckiest guy in the world, grateful for yet another year with a wife like me. His words made me blush with joy. I couldn't help but appreciate how deeply in love we still were, just as we were when we first started dating all those years ago. Then, Harry and I decided to share some exciting news with everyone. With smiles on our faces, we announced that we were expecting a baby. Everyone took a moment to process the news before exclaiming in happiness. My mother started to cry and came over to hug me. My father-in-law had tears running down his face as they congratulated both me and Harry. Everyone was so happy for us and excitedly asked us if we had come up with baby names. The only person who stuck out was Kayla. She looked stunned. I thought maybe she was just processing the news, but then her expression changed, and she just walked away, looking pissed. I was a bit worried, thinking she might ruin yet another celebration for us, but I got distracted by other people coming over to talk to me. When it was time to serve lunch, I got up to help my in-laws bring out the food, but my husband and parents urged me to remain seated, telling me that I shouldn't lift a finger during this time. I was sitting patiently, waiting for my husband to bring me a plate, when Kayla came up to me, beaming. She had a plate of food in her hands and handed it to me, loudly announcing that she personally wanted to serve me food since she was so happy about my pregnancy. As she handed me the plate, she even made a comment about how she wanted to make up for all the times she had been rude to me in the past. I nodded and graciously accepted the plate. She then walked away. As I was about to dig in, I noticed something odd. She had brought shrimp on my plate. It is well known in my family that I am highly allergic to shrimp, so I was shocked that Kayla even served it to me. I shook my head in disappointment and got up to get my own food. At that moment, Jamie came over to congratulate me on my pregnancy. We talked for a bit, and he asked me why I wasn't eating. I pointed out how Kayla had served me shrimp, probably by mistake. Jamie told me not to worry, took the plate from my hands, and said he'd have it since he liked shrimp. I smiled, nodded, and walked away. It wasn't even 5 minutes later when Jamie started to puke and retch violently. Everyone stopped eating, concerned, and stared at him as he stumbled to get up from his seat. Harry and Kayla rushed toward him, worried. Jamie pointed at his plate and then at his throat. Our eyes widened in shock as we realized something was clearly wrong with what he had eaten. Jamie fainted, and everyone gasped in horror. Kayla rushed over to check his plate, her eyes widening in shock. She turned to me and asked if I had given my plate to her husband. I nodded, utterly confused. In the midst of the chaos, someone called for an ambulance, and Jamie was rushed to the hospital. Kayla was crying uncontrollably and kept glancing at me with anger. We were informed later that Jamie had been poisoned. I almost fainted when I heard this, knowing, unlike everyone else, that the plate was originally meant for me. Whatever had poisoned Jamie could have poisoned me and my baby. Harry, my in-laws, and my parents had no idea about this yet. The police were called to take the food as evidence since no one had any idea what was in it that caused Jamie to collapse. As I sit here typing this, Jamie is still recovering in the hospital, while Kayla stayed with him overnight. My husband and I have been answering calls from concerned relatives, asking what happened to Jamie and who could have potentially poisoned him. My in-laws are shaken up by what has happened and are staying with us since they're afraid to return to their own home. No one has any idea what caused this sudden tragedy, especially when everything seemed to be going so well. I am terrified to tell everyone that the plate was originally mine and that Kayla had served it to me. If this turns into a full investigation, I will have to tell the police the truth. I feel extremely guilty about what happened, but most importantly, I am now very scared of what Kayla might be capable of. I don't want to be around her, nor can I let my children anywhere near her. Update 1. Wow, thank you for the thousands of comments on this post in just a matter of a few hours. I never imagined I'd get this many responses. My hands were shaking when I typed earlier, and I haven't been able to sleep. Despite what everyone keeps saying, I do feel somewhat responsible for my brother-in-law's incident. I should have just thrown the plate away, but I don't know why I let Jamie take it from me. I keep crying, thinking about what could happen to him. My husband knows something is wrong and has been hovering around me, thinking I'm just worried, but he has no idea what I know about his sister. I agree with the comments that I need to sit down and calmly talk to everyone. I don't know if they're going to believe me, but my in-laws have security cameras installed all around their house, and since the birthday party was in their backyard, I'm sure they can check and verify from the cameras that Kayla was the one who offered me the plate. I plan on talking to everyone tonight and will update you after that. Update 2. We talked, and I am so grateful to have the best in-laws in the world. Since my in-laws are staying over with us, I sat down with them and Harry during dinner to tell them that I had something important to discuss. I started by taking a deep breath, the weight of the situation heavy on my shoulders. With everyone gathered around, I recounted the events of the birthday party, explaining how Kayla had served me a plate with shrimp and how Jamie had unknowingly eaten it, resulting in his poisoning. As I spoke, the shock and disbelief on their faces mirrored my own feelings. My in-laws exchanged concerned glances, while Harry's expression shifted from confusion to anger. I continued, expressing my fear about Kayla's possible motives and her previous attempts to hurt me. I admitted my hesitation in sharing this information, fearing the potential consequences for myself and our unborn child. My mother-in-law, being the pragmatic woman she is, immediately suggested checking the security camera footage. My father-in-law nodded in agreement, recognizing the severity of the situation. Harry, though visibly upset, remained silent, absorbing the shocking revelation. After reviewing the security footage from their camera app, the truth was undeniable. The footage clearly showed Kayla offering me the plate and the subsequent events leading to Jamie's distress. The weight of the evidence left no room for doubt. Emotions ran high as the realization set in. Harry, now fully aware of his sister's malicious intent, struggled to contain his anger. My in-laws were appalled by their daughter's actions, shocked at the lengths she had gone to create chaos. We sat stunned in silence, trying to comprehend why she would do something like this. In the aftermath of this revelation, my in-laws decided to turn over the evidence to the police, as this was a very serious matter. My father-in-law and Harry plan on meeting with Jamie once he recovers, since Jamie is the one who needs to press charges against Kayla. I have no idea how Jamie will react, and I feel like crying every time I think about how I allowed him to take my plate, which was poisoned. I haven't been able to sleep or eat properly, as I'm so worried about him. I'll update you all again when something significant happens. Update 3. Okay, everyone, I'm finally back with an update. I know it's been a month since my last update, but I'm a pregnant woman going through a lot right now. First things first, my in-laws handed the security footage over to the police, and after watching the evidence, Kayla was arrested. She didn't even deny the charges, she immediately burst into tears and admitted to everything. My husband talked to Jamie about what had happened, and Jamie was just as shocked as any of us. My husband urged him to press charges against Kayla since this was such a sinister thing to do, and he reassured Jamie that no matter what, he would always be part of our family. In the end, after Jamie recovered, he decided to press charges against her and also filed for divorce. Kayla called my in-laws, crying and begging for their forgiveness. It turns out that Kayla is actually pregnant herself. She pleaded with them to bail her out, trying to manipulate them by saying they should do it for the sake of their future grandchild. But my father-in-law firmly told her that they were done coddling her and that she needed to finally take responsibility for her actions. My mother-in-law is extremely sad about what's happening with her daughter, but she understands that what Kayla did cannot simply be forgiven. The police found evidence that she had tampered with the food, intending to harm me, but it backfired and ended up hurting her husband. Kayla has been charged with multiple offenses related to food tampering, endangering life, and causing harm. She has been begging Jamie not to press charges, saying that it was all my fault anyway, but, thankfully, Jamie doesn't care. His mind is set on punishing her. Her court hearing will begin soon. I don't think she'll escape this time. Meanwhile, to everyone asking, my son and I are doing okay. Nate has no idea what his aunt did, and Harry and I plan on sitting down with him to explain the truth eventually. We want him to know and be aware of these kinds of situations. I know it's going to be a difficult conversation to have with a little one, but it's necessary. I'm also going for regular ultrasound scans every 2 weeks for my pregnancy, as advised by my doctor. We don't plan on finding out the gender of the baby, as we want it to be a surprise. My parents know what happened with Kayla, and they've become very protective of me. They're worried this might affect my psychological well-being during the pregnancy, and they've been encouraging me to go to therapy. I agree with them because, despite my outward calm, I've developed a deep-rooted fear after what Kayla did to my food. I'm scared to eat any outside food or anything I haven't prepared myself. My husband understands my fear and has been there for me every step of the way, so hopefully, I'll get over this irrational fear soon. Update 4. It's been 8 months since my last update. Kayla is currently serving time in prison after being found guilty of the charges. I never attended her court proceedings, but my in-laws did. They told me how Kayla admitted in court that she had been jealous of me for years because she never wanted an outsider to marry her brother. She had always dreamed of one of her best friends marrying Harry, which is why she bullied me when we first started dating. When we announced that we were pregnant during Harry's birthday party, she was filled with jealousy since she had been planning to announce her own pregnancy as well. After suffering a miscarriage previously, she wanted to share her good news but felt like we stole her moment to shine. According to her, because of her pregnancy hormones, she became so angry that she mixed a small amount of rat poison into my food. She admitted that she just wanted me to end up in the hospital and never intended to cause harm to me or the baby. She claimed she never expected that I would give my plate to Jamie and that I basically poisoned her husband, so she deserved a lighter sentence. Of course, the judge didn't buy any of her excuses, and Kayla was sentenced to prison. She will be out of our lives for quite some time. Jamie has successfully divorced her and is finally free. Over the months, we've stayed in contact with Jamie, and we continue to include him in family activities whenever possible. He and I have had several conversations, and I've apologized profusely for giving him my plate that day. He assured me that it was never my fault. Hearing that made me cry because I had been replaying the moment over and over in my head, wishing I had done things differently. I'm glad Jamie is doing okay now, and as for me and Harry, we've welcomed a baby girl into our family. Despite the lingering shadows of the past, the presence of our daughter has brought warmth and light into our lives. Our son, Nate, is ecstatic about being a big brother, and he has been showering his little sister with affection and love. Watching our children bond fills our hearts with gratitude. Throughout all of this, my parents and in-laws have been there for us, helping us navigate this new chapter in our lives. I'm thankful to have such a strong support system, especially after everything that has happened with Kayla. Even though Kayla is out of our lives now, the impact of her actions still lingers. I've been going to therapy, as suggested by my parents, and it's helped me process everything that's happened. The trauma of the poisoning incident left me feeling paranoid, especially around food, and I've struggled with trust issues. It's been hard to let go of the fear that someone could try to harm me or my family again, but with the support of my therapist, I've slowly been regaining my confidence and learning how to cope. My husband, Harry, has been my rock through all of this. He's been incredibly supportive, understanding my fears and helping me feel safe. We've had many long talks about what happened, and we've both agreed that cutting Kayla out of our lives completely was the best decision for our family's peace of mind. I've even started cooking more often at home, something I used to enjoy before the incident but became afraid to do. Harry helps me in the kitchen, and we've turned it into a bonding activity with Nate, teaching him little things like mixing ingredients or setting the table. Jamie has also started to rebuild his life after the divorce. He's remained close to our family, and we've supported him as much as we can. He told me once that while the experience of being poisoned by his own wife was terrifying, it was also a wake-up call for him. He realized he had been overlooking Kayla's toxic behavior for too long and had been making excuses for her, just like the rest of us. Now that he's free from her influence, he feels like he can breathe again. He's been focusing on his work, and we see him regularly for family dinners or casual get-togethers. As for Kayla's baby, I'm not sure what's going to happen. She gave birth while in prison, and from what we've heard, the baby is currently with a relative of Jamie's, as neither my in-laws nor Jamie want anything to do with her after everything she's done. It breaks my heart to think about that innocent child growing up in such a difficult situation, but I know there's nothing I can do about it. Kayla has caused too much pain, and it's hard to feel sympathy for her, even as a mother. My in-laws are devastated by how things turned out, but they've stood firm in their decision to keep their distance from her. My own baby girl, however, has been a source of healing for me. Holding her in my arms brings me so much joy and reminds me that despite all the darkness we've been through, there is still light in our lives. Nate has been the most loving big brother, always wanting to help with his little sister. Watching the two of them together fills my heart with hope for the future. We've also decided to focus on moving forward and leaving the past behind. Harry and I have talked about planning more family vacations, making new memories, and focusing on the positive. After everything we've endured, we deserve happiness and peace. We've cut off all toxic relationships and are surrounding ourselves only with those who truly care about us. In a way, Kayla's actions, though horrible, made me realize how strong we are as a family. We've endured so much, but we've come out of it closer and more united. I'm grateful for the love and support I have, and as I look at my growing family, I feel a sense of peace that I haven't felt in a long time. Life is starting to feel normal again, and for that, I am deeply thankful.